Second doctrine of Calvinism: unconditional election. The introductory chapter. Introduction of section. As discussed in Book I on the total depravity theory, according to Augustine, man is so depraved and unable that he cannot even choose to be saved. Therefore, God in election preselects those who would be saved, and he damned those who are eternally lost. This is the philosophical brainchild of Saint Augustine, which was passed down to John Calvin. This is the heart of Calvinism. This theory is the basis of Augustine's doctrine of unconditional election and predestination. It is based on his misinterpretation of certain passages in Romans chapter 9, in particular, the account of what God said to Rebekah concerning the twin boys she carried in her womb, Jacob being elected over Esau, v. 11. The Jacob and Esau misunderstanding, Paul's analogy of the potter and the vessels of honor and dishonor are all misused as models of predestination and election. From these and from certain other passage phrases in Romans chapter 9, Augustine made Romans 9 the heart of the doctrine of election and predestination. Augustine hijacked Romans 9 for his own purposes. He took the passage off of its intended course, different from how it was meant by the author, St. Paul. Augustine and many of the philosophers in his day believed in and taught a secular perspective of absolute predestination, determinism, and fatalism. These ancient philosophical concepts fit well with Augustine's teaching that man was totally unable to do good at all, due to his totally depraved state. By this, Augustine's aim was to show that there was nothing in man that would make him able to choose to go to heaven. Therefore, God chose for mankind, even before they were born. This is the essence and premises of the predestination theory of Calvinism. Calvinism teaches that those selected elected to salvation and those predestined to reprobation have nothing to do with it. Neither the good or bad they do in life can change their eternal destiny. According to Augustine and Calvin, men are predestined to their eternal designation. In this, they are referring to the final salvation or reprobation of everyone in the human race. This was philosophically dreamed up by Augustine and is presented as a theory. Such theory has been found to have no basis anywhere in the Bible. To support it, Augustine referred to the passages in the Bible that read most like they are teaching his doctrine. This is how he came to Romans 9. A number of verses in Romans 9 read like they are teaching Augustine's theory, but research proves, as we share in this book, that their true context is nowhere near what Augustinian Calvinism teaches. Augustine inaccurately used Romans 9 to support his philosophical theology. Philosophical theology builds its doctrine on philosophical theories, not necessarily consistent with the context of the scriptures it references. It force-fits the scriptures to its theory. Salvation ante brevis emerita, of election without regard to foreseen cooperation or merits. It is an early work in which he pondered why Jacob was elected and Esau reprobated when they were nowise different. He considered possible solutions and concluded that it was due simply to the will of God with no reason in the brothers. This is, of course, he thought, is a figure of our own election or reprobation. In this work, Augustine taught that grace is congruous to the recipient by giving him delight. God calls his elect in the manner that will produce their consent, ch. 13. He could effectually call all but has opted not to, Ch 14. He gives the elect a delight in those things by which they advance to him and gives them the assent, earnest effort, and the power to do good. Ch 21. This was Augustine's first literary production after becoming Bishop of Hippo and was written about 396 in response to divers questions put to him by Simplician, his student. It contains the essential features that he would have to defend against the Pelagians for the rest of his life. His ultimate exposition of the matter is contained in his final, twofold book called The Predestination of the Saints and the Gift of Perseverance. What does Jacob have to do with salvation, and what does Esau have to do with reprobation? I would agree with Calvinists to the ideas that God is just in choosing as he wishes to, as in the cases of Jacob over Esau, Sarah over Hagar, Isaac over Ishmael. But where they drop the ball is by equating God's choosing as illustrated in Romans 9 with individual persons. Erroneously thinking, in the Calvinist mindset, Isaac and Jacob represent individuals who are elected by God, and Ishmael and Esau represent those who are rejected, reprobate. Employing that assumption, the Calvinist attempt to build something along the lines of, God chose Jacob over Esau prior to their even being born. This demonstrates that God unconditionally chooses which people he wants to save. The lucky elect in the gospel of Calvinism. In short, they see the difference between Jacob and Esau as being directly analogous to the difference between one who is elected by God and one who is rejected, in eternal salvation. The way they cover this ungodly suggestion is by teaching an emphasis on celebrating the privilege of being in the elect. The celebration of Calvinism is in the gospel of an individual being lucky enough to be elected. Piper,